All right, let's kick it off. Welcome, everyone, to our second webinar of this series. Last week, I spoke with Chris Butterworth on actually a lot. We covered a lot of ground on process design and continuous improvement, who your customer is as the legal team, ideal results, ideal behaviors. Really, a ton of ground. I mean, Chris did the majority of the talking, and he's a great speaker. And so, if you didn't catch that, really encourage you to go check it out. And check out Chris's books as well. Really engaging content. Um, but that's Chris, who's not a lawyer. But today I'm joined by Sophie Spurr. Hey, Sophie. Great to have you.
Hiya, how you doing?
Um, yeah, good, thanks. Really excited about this one. Quick housekeeping, 45 minutes. Try to stick to it. Normally, to be honest, we run out of time, but let's see how we go. Q&A, if you have any questions, please post them into the chat. If we get time at the end, we'll definitely give time to answer some of those questions. Obviously, Chatham House rules against any QA and Q&A, and we'll make this recording available towards the end. And so, quick intros. My name's Ian Teague. I am head of delivery at Radiant Law, been around here for 10 years. In my role, I split my time kind of half between working closely with clients, designing solutions, and the other half is working with our team of lawyers around the world, making sure they're just doing a fantastic job and making services better and better. And a bit about Radiant briefly. We are an alternative legal services provider, ALSP. We're a bit weird, is I think the best way to introduce Radiant, and that our purpose is to create great relationships. And we see that primarily through negotiating lots and lots of commercial contracts for large companies and for scaling companies, using the right blend of, I think, people, process, and technology to do so. An ALSP is such an interesting question. I just before this webinar, I just searched it and I found a number of different definitions. There are a lot of ALSPs in the market, all doing slightly different things. But briefly, I think an alternative legal service provider is kind of non-traditional. Some of us are law firms, some aren't. Normally specialize in a particular area. Some are kind of legal process outsourcing, others aren't, others are more technical. Normally very strong on tech, want access to technology through an ALSP is real good route and cost effective. Um, but I'm going to introduce Sophie in a second. But while I do that, Enzo, could you key up that poll? Just a few interesting questions on ALSPs. So Enzo will key that up, just three questions for you to click through your answers. And as that goes, let me tell you a little bit about Sophie. So Sophie's Associate General Counsel within the Digital Legal Services team in HSBC, based in Leeds. Been with HSBC for, Sophie, I think about a decade, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Long time.
shockingly, I
Yeah,
can't.
yeah. Diverse experience, taken on a whole bunch of roles over that time, and recently kind of taken on the responsibility of managing relationships with HSBC's ALSPs. Big welcome to you.
Thank you.
Hopefully, I haven't botched the intro, but why
Not
don't
at
you tell
all.
us? You tell us about yourself.
Yeah, no, I think you've kind of covered it all pretty much. But yeah, like Ian said, I've worked at HSBC now for coming up to 11 years, which is a little bit crazy to me. Prior to that, I was at DLA Piper, working in the commercial contracts team there. At HSBC, as you probably can imagine, we are quite a significant legal team that's spread, across the globe. The team that I work in is called the Digital Legal Services team. So we do predominantly procurement contracts. So these are for any of the kind of businesses or functions, anything that basically HSBC procure into the bank. So kind of platform services, right down to your tables, chairs, your retail space, etc. Like everything kind of would come through our team. As a bank, we obviously have other legal teams. We have like the specialist legal teams as well. So we have like the employment legal teams and the business line legal teams who are advising on kind of the more banking reg type stuff. But that's not what I do. I just kind of do the main commercial contracts. And at the moment, I'm facing into kind of the ALSP kind of panels and managing that relationship as well.
Brilliant. I mean, how big's the DLS team? How
I think
many?
it's probably about 40, 50 of us. So we are predominantly commercial contract lawyers. We also do cyber. So any kind of cyber incident that impacts our third party suppliers would come into our team, as well as the data protection advice as well and digital legal. Like you said, Ian, we're predominantly based in Leeds, but obviously have kind of a presence in London where our head office is, but also Hong Kong, America, Dubai, etc. So yeah, so we're quite spread, which makes the variety of the work that comes in really, really interesting and really varied.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's quite a big operation.
Yeah,
Um,
huge.
so tell me, ALSPs, you've been around the bank for almost 11 years. I know you've interacted with lots of ALSPs over that time. Tell us about how your view of ALSPs has kind of evolved over that time.
I think, as a bank, when I first joined kind of 10, 11 years ago, we didn't use ALSPs at all. Like we would
Right.
use traditional law firms for kind of big deals, but we didn't have kind of ALSPs. And quite soon after I joined, we started that first gen onboarding of an alternative legal service provider. Um, and the motivation for that was that we were seeing kind of we needed to get the right work in the right place.
Right.
And we needed the internal team to be doing work that that they found motivating,
Mhm.
that they found interesting, and there was a lot of noise that was created by kind of low risk um, and not necessarily strategic work that was coming
Yeah.
in, and it was quite difficult to kind of filter all of that out. So over time, we've kind of embedded processes that have helped get ALSPs on board to kind of be doing all of that low value work. Um, and as well, we've seen kind of from going from a position where we didn't even have an ALSP as an organisation. Now we have a whole panel of
Right.
ALSPs that we use for different things. So we're not just kind of using one ALSP. We kind of go to a panel for different types of work. If it's a remediation project, and we might we'd put that out for tender and go to like the panel and see who's best for that. If it's ongoing work, again, we have different ALSPs that support that. But I think kind of the way it has evolved over time is that people have actually seen the value in it a lot more. And I don't just mean kind of the in-house legal team. I mean the business as well, like our business stakeholders. They understand now that actually using an ALSP enables us to do more volume work and gets better advice and much quicker. If all of the queries, like the amount of legal queries that we would get as a team, if they all came into the DLS legal team,
Right.
we just wouldn't be able to, like, we would just be overcome by volume. Like, we wouldn't be able to do it. Whereas now we've got like working in conjunction with our ALSPs, we've got processes in place that enable us to get like answers quickly, and the turnaround times are much better. Like the business satisfaction ratings are much
Well,
higher, and in turn that enables the internal legal team to work on the stuff that is strategic to the bank and that they find
right.
interesting. Um, and I think that's really kind of helped like the retention as well of our staff because I think the job satisfaction is quite high within our team because
Yeah.
people are doing stuff that makes the news. Like we're working on deals that kind of have like a customer impact, have a regulatory impact, are really, really high value, like above 20 million type deals. If it's below that, it's probably not really coming into our team anymore. Whereas 10 years ago, it did. Like we would be kind of doing statements of work that are worth 1 million that didn't really have that much like legal risk because it's all underneath a framework agreement. So you have
Yeah.
to kind of like question why as a team are you employing, you know, really highly skilled lawyers to do things that actually don't carry that much legal risk. And I think that evolution of thinking and that acceptance within the business, like within the internal stakeholder community, that actually this isn't a bad thing. Like using an ALSP isn't a bad thing. It actually is a really good thing. It's going to get you a better outcome quicker turnaround times. It's going to enable you to like progress with what your business needs are quicker on that smaller scale stuff. And then on the bigger stuff, it's also going to make sure that you've got the right lawyers working on that because they're not distracted by kind of the noise of all the other lower value. So I think it's that evolution of acceptance of where like an ALSP sits in the market is what I've kind of seen change most over
Yeah.
the past 10 years or so.
Oh, interesting. I mean, when something comes into, I mean, I'm sure back then, 10 years ago, it was just like one inbox and everything came in one
Yeah,
place, and then it was like chaos.
yeah,
Who does what? I mean, there's an NDA, as you said, and a 20 million pound deal in at the same time, and like they both kind of get triaged. You get the
yeah,
NDA, you get the 20
yeah, yeah,
million pound.
yeah.
Absolute chaos. Um, when something new comes in, so that you mentioned like a remediation project or some other thing lands. I mean, what's your thinking like nowadays? We're trying to figure out how the work gets done if it's a new thing.
Yeah,
You-
so I mean, it is completely different. Yeah, like 10 years ago, our team was structured and we were aligned to business lines and functions. So you worked within like I'm going to call it like the commercial contracts legal team, just because DLS probably doesn't mean that much to everyone else on the call. But yeah, so you worked in the commercial contracts legal team and you aligned to a business or a function.
Okay.
So things came in and you dealt with it for that business or function within HSBC.
Mhm.
Now we are kind of much broader in scope in terms of the work that we do. We don't align directly to any business line or function. Um, we have processes in place, like triage criteria in terms of whether or not something even needs to be legally referred, so whether or not legal need to even get involved.
Yeah.
So that, like you mentioned, the NDAs, that they wouldn't even come into our legal team. Like now we have pre-approved processes where the business and procurement can go and self-serve, so they can, as long as it falls within certain guardrails, the business can just go get their NDA and crack on, and there's no need for legal to even touch that.
Yeah.
And we have that for other things as well. Like there's certain goods and services that can be procured without legal engagement, provided that they fall within certain guardrails. Again, it comes down predominantly to value and kind of regulatory risk, whether or not it's touching customers, etc. So I think that's kind of like the first stage in terms of
Yes.
triaging what actually even comes to legal.
Yeah.
Um, and then after that, if it is decided that actually this does need a lawyer to look at it, there's then we do like a legal referral assessment, which the business have to fill in, and that goes to our alternative service legal provider. They look at that and decide where it should sit. So
Okay.
again, that is based on the value and the materiality of the deal. So if it's kind of low value, not material, then it gets triaged to one of the alternative legal service providers, and they'll pick that up. And they've got playbooks and they guardrails and they know kind of what they can negotiate and how that should all work. If
Yeah.
actually it's something that is more strategic, customer facing, over kind of 20 million ish, is like maybe a material outsourcing, then that would come into our team. So it just means that I don't actually have the figures in terms of the MI, in terms of the volumes that we get that come in, but it just means that the internal legal team is basically, if you look at it, think of it as like a triangle. We're just
Mhm.
doing the top tier of that
Right.
triangle in terms of what is actually coming back into the in-house legal team. There's still an awful lot of work that's getting done, but it's just not getting done by us.
Yeah.
And I think again, that just drives better business relationships because legal aren't seen as a blocker anymore. Whereas previously, we wouldn't have been able to turn our attention to kind of that lower lying fruit
Hmm.
because we were too distracted by the big mega deal. Whereas now, actually, we've got a solution in place that works to enable the business to progress with whatever procurement activity it has to do,
Yes.
whilst also enabling us to concentrate on kind of the bigger, more strategic stuff where I think you do need an in-house lawyer because you need those relationships and you need to understand how the bank works and the company works. But for some other stuff, you probably don't. And, as long as you're playbooking effectively and keeping kind of those continuous conversations going, you can actually have like a really good working relationship there.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned kind of job satisfaction, retention. You guys are quite a settled team, right? I mean, I think a lot of the team on DLS has been around for a long time.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's a strength, right? It's like we're now more
100%.
knowing the business for a longer period. I mean,
Yeah.
11 years, as you said, you kind of know everyone in 11 years.
Well, you'd think.
You hopefully know every acronym. And I know you guys have a
Well,
million acronyms. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's a real strength for, I mean, what's the profile of a team like? I mean, kind of junior, mid, senior lawyers. What does it look
we're
like broadly?
pretty we're pretty senior now. I would say that most lawyers are 10 years plus qualified.
Wow.
And it's not unusual for someone to have worked, for the team for kind of 5 years plus now. Um, and I do think that in part is down to the relationships we've built with our
Wow.
ALSPs because um, you're not getting that deal fatigue. We're able to listen to
Hmm.
what our colleagues want to do, and we're able to think of solutions, like resourcing solutions that enable them to do the work that they want to do. And it all comes back to that very initial kind of thought process of making sure the right work is with the right people. Um,
Mm.
if our kind of 10-year plus lawyers are doing statements of work that are kind of really quite low value and aren't like
Yeah.
particularly interesting to them and aren't kind of motivating them, they're not getting up and thinking, oh, this is like a really good deal, I'm really excited about this. Like you kind of get that boredom sets it in. Whereas for us now, our lawyers are all working on like the biggest deals that the bank,
Chunky
that
stuff.
comes into the bank, the chunky ones, yeah. And we're able to give them that kind of, so it's not just about them working on like the sexy deals and the high profile deals. It's also about giving them the headspace to be able to do it properly and
Yeah.
feel like they're not kind of constantly under the cosh because they're getting kind of loads of emails on all this other stuff that in the scheme of the bank isn't as strategic. Like it's still important, still needs to get done, but doesn't need to be done by them. So
Yeah.
we're kind of we're taking the noise away from them and dealing with it elsewhere so that they can get on with the stuff that they want to. And it means we can have those conversations, like, where do you see your career in five
Yeah.
years from now? Like, what kind of stuff do you want to be doing?
Yeah.
And we can think how we can resource to enable them to do that kind of work when it comes in,
Yeah.
because they're not having to do the other stuff. And I
Yeah.
think that is really, really valuable in terms of like job satisfaction.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it really does sound like you've boxed it right. You know where things land and where you can add most value. Because I'm sure someone in your seat is not adding a ton of value doing that SOW, for example.
Yeah.
You might have someone screaming at you, but it's not going to add strategic value to the bank, and no one's ever going to say, "Well done, Sophie, you did that one SOW,"
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And I
As you
think that's
said,
really important. Like you don't like get distracted by the noise. Like in terms of like we know we know where things should sit. Like and we know what our risk
yeah,
profile is or what our risk appetite is. And that's something that's evolved
yeah,
over time. And it's something that, you know, we don't always get right. Like sometimes we might be like, actually, maybe that should have not gone over there. Maybe that should have come over here. Or actually, maybe we need to like look at what our triage criteria is again to make sure that we're capturing that new scope of deals
yes,
or whatever that kind of is falling under the radar. So it's a continual evolution as well. Like
yeah,
it's not something that we set 10 years ago and then we just sat back and was like, right, fine. Like we're always having conversations about whether or not this is right, whether or not we need to reassess. Can we kind of nudge it a bit higher or do we need to bring it a bit lower?
yeah,
Um, and I think that's what makes it work because if you don't have that feedback loop, with kind of with the
yes,
ALSPs in terms of what's working for them, but also with our internal stakeholders in terms of like, has that worked for you? Like, did that actually, did you get what you needed? Like, if we're not having those conversations, it will fall away, and
yeah,
once you get that kind of that the trust, once that starts to go, then I think you do begin to jeopardize your ALSP relationship. So I think it is really important that we continually have that feedback loop in terms of where the risk should lie and making
yeah,
sure that we're pushing ourselves to do more and to kind of and to not
always, yeah,
stagnate,
yeah.
but equally that we're not going too far too soon.
So tell me about that. I mean, you guys are a big bank, right? And so I know zillion contracts. Not all teams are the same size, but my sense is these principles can apply in other
Yeah,
places, right?
100%.
I hear all the time someone saying, I don't know how you could possibly outsource part of your legal function to an ALSP. Kind of scratch my head knowing the stories about you guys who've been doing it
Yeah,
for a decade, right? And getting better as you do it.
yeah,
But talk to me about the partnership element. I mean, what does that look like? Because you're doing the strategic deals. There's obviously higher levels of collab needed to make the BAU still function well,
yeah.
so that it doesn't suddenly get shifted back to you. I mean, just tell me about what does it look like, that partnership element?
Yeah. So I think firstly, in terms of like that feedback, how can people outsource to ALSPs? I'm like, how can you not? Like, how can you not? Like, how are you functioning as a team, as a legal function, if everything's coming in all the time? Like, I just don't understand how, unless you've got a massive internal legal team with really varying um, PQEs.
Mhm.
I don't know how you're able to function like that. So I think, I really do challenge people that say that they need to kind of maybe reflect a little bit on whether or not they're doing the right stuff.
Yeah.
But in terms of like, how do we make the partnership work? It really, for me, I think it boils down predominantly to like the communication and having those honest conversations, like I touched on
Mhm.
earlier, the feedback loops. Like if something's not
Mhm.
working, let's have that conversation. We can't push things under the carpet because that's not going to work. Like it's the problem's not going to go away. Like for
Yes.
us, this is like a 10-year embedded relationship that we've had with our ALSPs. So, you know, this isn't something that's going to change. So if something's not working, and if we're getting feedback from the same stakeholders or
Mhm.
we've noticed a
Mhm.
problem over here, like it's having those honest conversations and just saying that, look, like we don't think that has gone as well as what it could have done. Like, what can we do better? What can you do better? Um,
Yeah.
and I think part of that as well is also understanding kind of the commercial model in terms of like how the AI, what's driving the ALSP as well. It can't all just be on the customer side. Like, so you've kind of got to understand like how they're structured, how are you making your money, how are you making it work for you guys, so that
Yeah.
we can make sure that we're sending the right stuff over the fence. Because ultimately, if we're trying to fit something into your commercial model that doesn't actually work for you guys, then that in itself is not going to be a relationship that is going to work and is going to have the longevity that we need. So I think understanding kind of the commercial model of what you've signed up for and how you've packaged up your matters that you're sending across, and sticking to that, and like being
Got it.
quite firm in terms of like that's what this fits into this peg, and we'll send that across. But like beyond that, we're not, because if we start to do the whole scope creep thing,
Yeah.
that could create a problem for your ALSP if actually it becomes not financially viable. And then I think kind of the trust element and being on the same team. I think a lot of like the partnership type stuff comes down to the relationship, and
Mhm.
that'll be different for everyone. Like the kind of from a relationship perspective and a governance perspective, the people that I would get on might be different to the people that, a different in-house legal team. Like, I think as a lawyer, I'm probably quite pragmatic and quite commercial, but I accept that other people might not be like
Right.
that. And it's good that we're all like, varied. Um, but yeah, so like again, it's making sure that you find the ALSP relationship that works for you, and that then you
Mhm.
build on that and continually build on that. And again, it's not something that's allowed to stagnate, because
Yeah.
if you don't have that trust, in terms of kind of from our perspective as the client, you have the trust that you are throwing this stuff over the fence and it
Mhm.
falls within a certain risk appetite and a risk
Mhm.
criteria, and it's where it should be. But we're not then getting in, like we don't Q&A the stuff that our ALSPs do. Like
Yeah.
I think you guys do a bit of Q&A on your
Yeah,
side
we
of the
do loads
fence.
of
Yeah,
quality
yeah.
assurance. Yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah.
we don't do that, because like that would, from our perspective, defeat the whole point of us doing it. So we have to trust that that you are working within the parameters that we've set. But equally,
Yeah.
you guys have to trust us. You have to trust us that we're going to manage kind of the whole internal politics of HSBC, like any unreasonable behaviours that we see or unnecessary escalations, like that we've got your back there, and that we are operating as a team.
Yeah.
Um, because we do see our ALSPs as a true extension of the in-house
Mm.
legal team.
Mhm.
Um, so in the same way that you would with kind of your in-house colleagues, you build that trust and that relationship. I think it's really important to do that with your ALSP as well.
Yeah. We used to work for a client and there's a sales function. And I know that we had every now and again sales went mad, right? Which is like your crazy sales team,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Who
yeah,
incentivized to sell anything, right? They would literally sell anything that a thing that doesn't exist, they would try and sell it.
yeah.
So legal's
Nice.
always there going, hold up, just, no, you can't sell all your IP. You can't do
Yeah.
that.
So that's not a good idea.
Yeah. And then you would get sometimes feedback like, hold up, legal's holding this deal up.
Yeah,
And I remember the collab was so strong that we knew we could always go speak to the in-house team. And there was two-way, dialogue here about this salesperson's going nuts.
yeah,
We need actually your help. And we would hear it the other way. Sometimes this looks slow. Can you go investigate, as you
yeah,
said, there may be a problem there in the process or something like that. I also find that it's often small changes that can make a material difference to a relationship. And like hitting those kind of small changes early is so helpful. Like, we've
yeah,
noticed this. Is that a problem? Oh, we didn't see it. Or we've noticed this in your process, client. If you could change that, that would make a material difference to those people. And I think that that two-way street you spoke about is just so important. It's
yeah,
hard for us
definitely.
as an ALSP to give feedback to a client. Like that is always tricky, but it is something seriously that I think that it would be so helpful to like go deeper into, like what's really working, how are we a fantastic client,
Yeah.
or how are we two-way.
Yeah, and but like you guys have given us that feedback, like in terms of like when I think about this stuff that that you've done for us in terms of remediation projects, for example, or even with our templates, you know, that feedback of that's not that clause is not working.
Yeah.
HSBC, you have gone too strong on that. Like, that's not market standard. That's not what we're seeing the other,
Yeah.
your kind of like competitors do. And we're getting pushback and it's blocking us constantly because every time we send out this clause or this template, we're seeing pushback on this element
Right.
of it. So we need to change it. And we wouldn't necessarily see that because like we don't have because of the
The
way we've
one-
structured our team,
Yeah.
yeah, like we don't have that MI because we're doing the big deals now. So the people in our team now we're working on like 4 or 5 deals and that's it. We don't do the volume in
Yes.
the way that we used to. So and the ones we're working on are the ones that are like really strategic and you would fight the death, you'd fight the fight to the death.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
really
Absolutely.
useful when we get that feedback from our ALSPs, that even if it's kind of an internal thing within internal politics within HSBC, but or just like your template, you need to change this because it's slowing you down.
Mm. Mm.
And I think that's really, really valuable.
Yeah, I mean, you guys really are cutting edge. I wanted to ask about just the evolution of things. Um, I know that, I mean, laws change. There's some new exec who's got a new, different view. There's an operational change with an organization, and there's just like there's sometimes change with an organization. Um, I've quite enjoyed how you've sometimes taken things and said, "Come speak to us about when this comes up."
Yeah,
It's kind of like a slow down in process. It kind of comes into your team, and then we work on it together, and then it gets operationalized and comes back. I've quite enjoyed seeing that happen where all of these topics, I mean, AI, how do we deal with AI and
yeah,
contracts? But that was the latest topic of like, how do we
yeah.
deal with this? It's a new thing. It kind of, it's loose, it's high levels of collab, lots of engagement, and then it kind of gets productized down the line. I think it just shows, it's evolution and strong partnership through it.
Yeah, 100%. And then that keeping those playbooks, up to date, and
Yeah.
sometimes you guys are the first people that come to us with the problem because you're seeing the noise more than us. Like, yeah, there's AI sanctions. Obviously, GDPR is a bit historic now,
Mhm.
but there's ones that we've seen real noise over the past kind of 12 months on, um, which we hadn't historically, and
Yeah.
like and kind of
Yeah.
having you guys come and say that's a problem, and then us trying to work out how best to handle it. And I think it's the whole like fail fast thing, like we'll
Absolutely.
implement something, see if it works, and if it doesn't, let's change it and let's move on.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and then playbook it. And, you know, we have like the continuous playbook that gets updated with
All the
HSBC's
time.
changing positions all the time.
Yeah.
And that's again not a stagnant thing. It's constantly getting updated and then comes back to us for approval every like quarter or so, is it? I can't actually fully remember, but yeah, it comes back to us for that kind of final sign off. But we don't want to be a blocker here, so we
Yes.
need to be like quick in giving what our opinion is, quickly playbook it, quickly enable the ALSP to to continue with the work based on those guardrails that we've given.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's the only way you can make it work. Otherwise, the internal legal team becomes the blocker.
Yeah, and that's a danger, right? That then you've lost the story there to the business. It's like, well, it's
Yeah,
still got even worse. Yeah. I mean, how do you maintain the right level of control? Because if you're kind of managing a relationship, the work is kind of like leaving, you said an extension of the team, but it is kind of leaving the team and being
yeah,
done by someone else. So how do you create this, like maintain the right level of control, but also not be a bottleneck?
yeah. I think I think it's tricky because it comes down to that risk profile. So
Right.
like, so we have made a decision, like within our legal team, that certain things that fall below certain criteria doesn't have to be seen by the internal legal team. And that's a
Right.
risk-based decision. And that's something that is under continual review. And
Hmm.
like I said, sometimes we get it, the majority of the time we get it right. Sometimes there'll be the odd occasion where actually, something has gone a bit wrong. Um, we've communicated really well within kind of HSBC about our ALSPs. So procurement are really familiar with what goes where, and
Hmm.
our business as well, our business stakeholders are really familiar with kind of working with our ALSPs on matters. So if they've got concerns, they would often kind of escalate to me, like if they think something's not quite
Right.
working. So I would hear back via that route. Similarly, from the ALSP, like we have an inbox that is managed by a few of us within the internal legal team, which can be emailed, which is used basically as a communication forum with our ALSPs and email queries into there from escalations, behavioural issues, or how should we handle this type
Yeah.
thing, or even actually this got triaged to us. It's now blown up into like this other thing, or because
Yes.
we're always relying on the data that
Yeah.
you know procurement are the ones that do the legal referral. So
Yeah.
actually, if that's been filled out incorrectly, or actually it's evolved into something else, then it could have landed in the wrong place. So we're relying on that feedback from our ALSP to be like, actually this has become something much bigger, and then we would reprioritize that and look at bringing it back inside into our house. But you know, you need to be comfortable in losing the control, like because we don't have, I don't have oversight of everything that's happening,
Yeah.
um, but that's kind of a risk-based decision, and we're comfortable with that because actually the stuff we don't have oversight of is the stuff that we don't think we should be doing anyway. So I think you do it, there is
Yeah.
kind of a culture, I think, that a cultural shift that if people aren't there yet, they kind of need to get to a point where they're looking at all the work that's coming in and thinking, what is it that we need to do? And what is it that could someone else do? And like, can we justify somebody else doing that? And if something went, if something didn't go quite right over there, like, would we be okay with that?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think it's that kind of thought process that people need to get comfortable with because you do need to give up a bit of control.
Yeah.
Um, but we
I
also have
sometimes
loads of
feel like
oversight.
if
Go on.
if there's more volume, it's more of a problem.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? It's like you can kind of deal with if it's painful and you're working late nights, it's one thing. But if you're always working to midnight, it's
yeah,
a massive problem. Then it kind of has to shift off your desk, and you kind of have to have that conversation of, well, what would need to be true in order for me to focus on the important things and for this to move off the desk?
yeah,
And I think, as you said, like how could you not do that? How could you not
yeah,
think that? But as soon as you start to ask that question of like, what would we need to do? What decisions would we need to make? Who would we need to speak to, communicate with in order to give this legs?
Yeah.
Is just a helpful question to ask.
And getting people on board with that journey, like because you may have resistance initially from your internal stakeholders who like going to, they like having,
Yes.
like they like having Sophie Spurr because like, I'm in the team and I can just go to her and I can just ask her my question and like, and that's easy to them. But
Yeah.
like actually if their query is at the bottom of my inbox because I don't have time to get to it, then they're not getting the service that they need. And again, legal's becoming the blocker. And I think sometimes
Yeah.
legal can have a bad rep
Yeah.
as being a blocker because we're risk averse or whatever. And actually, it's not about a legal issue that's blocking it. It's about a capacity issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and let's take that problem away. But that does mean that you need to take people on the journey with you. Like you need to take the business and your procurement colleagues, like however organizations are structured at HSBC, we have like legal, business, and procurement who would all be the stakeholders on a deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, you need to take them on that journey with you to be
Yeah.
like, implementing this
Has
is
these
giving
benefits.
you a better outcome.
Yeah.
And it's also meaning that we're going to be more responsive on the other stuff.
It's quite hard to tell that story of hold up here. If I know I'm your favorite lawyer, so we all get those emails
Yeah.
like, wow, you're my favorite lawyer. Next time I have
And
an
it's
issue, I would
nice.
come to you. You're gonna feel great about it, but you're also quite
Yeah.
terrified what comes next, you know? Um, but it's if we could change this, like the outcome would be you can procure the right thing faster,
Yeah.
or right, or you could sell that thing faster, and then you could get. It's quite hard to show the return on investment if you could do. But I think we all know it's pretty obvious if procurement can procure quicker and better and get more
Yeah.
legal support faster, they're going to get better things and they're going to get it at better savings, right? Like it's just going to, but it's, as you said,
Yeah.
it's a story to kind of tell the business like this is what it would need to
And
look
it's
like.
hard because until they see
Yeah.
it, like
Yes.
work out, like they're not going to believe it. And there will always be, if you're going from nothing as an organization, like you don't have any triage criteria and everything comes in and
Yeah.
you don't you don't really have support on anything, external support. And then you go into like something like an ALSP, like that is a massive change for
Yeah.
people to
Yeah.
get used to. Um, so yeah, so you need to like sell the story to them, and you will probably have resistance initially, just
Yeah.
because people don't like change and people
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
like being told, "Oh, you can't come to me anymore." Like you need like that needs to go over there.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think you need to be quite like hold the line with that quite firmly, otherwise it won't work.
Yeah.
Um,
We spoke to Chris last week, and Chris is so good about speaking about small experiments leads to big change. Like,
yeah,
go try something. You can start small. You can
yeah,
start small. You can try something, and build from there, learn, create a story. There's real anxiety about changing something,
yeah,
what this might lead to. We'll start small. You can start much.
exactly. And our use of like ALSPs has changed as well. When 10 years ago we were using them for, really low value, kind of not necessarily strategic stuff, not outsourcing, all of that. And when we've got all that off our desk, and as
Mm,
time has gone on, we've started to use ALSPs for, large scale remediation projects
mm,
that have kind of had very much a spotlight on them
mhm,
within the bank.
mhm.
And we've coupled that, there's always been like a bit of a tag team element, with the
Yeah,
internal HSBC legal team as well on those. But those have always had a lot of attention and a lot of senior
right.
attention because they've been regulatory focused.
Yeah,
And more recently, we're starting to see even more of a shift towards kind of our ALSPs doing more complex work for us. And that is something that we're trialing. Like, and just seeing how it works,
mhm.
like and if and it has been working well, and like so we're starting to kind of move more of that stuff across.
Yeah,
From a HSBC perspective, we're really focused on regulatory issues and customer impact, and if it's an outsourcing, they're kind of our main triggers.
top tier. Yeah,
Like price is an issue, like the price is a factor, but it's probably not as important to us as whether or not it's regulatory. So we can kind of think, well, actually, that's just worth a lot of money, but it's actually in terms of strategic value to HSBC, it's not as important as this over here, which is actually worth less money.
yeah,
So again, it's kind of evolving, but you're not going to start there. Like you're not going to start with an
Exactly.
ALSP relationship at that, but you're going to start small, like you say,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
build.
And sometimes the ALSP name freaks someone out. I mean, I saw the other day company used Magic Circle to go review contracts to tell them the name of supplier and whether there are assignment rights in the contract. I
Wow.
thought, but that was I've gone to someone I trust, right,
Yeah.
to do this, and there aren't those trust levels yet with an ALSP. But golly, I think actually if someone explored that, you might find, oh, you got the results quicker, probably
Yeah.
more cost effective as well, right, and probably learn something along the way. So I think those are opportunities often to try something.
Yeah, exactly.
And try the market. There's lots of ALSPs out there.
yeah, and there's still a place for the traditional law firm. Like we've not
100%.
seen like any like, we've got a panel of kind of law firms that do more of our traditional kind of law firm stuff, and we've got our ALSP panel, and there's no competition and no real overlap there, like, and everyone knows that we work with each other in different ways,
Yes.
and I think kind of the next phase of our evolution with ALSPs may be seeing more of a partnership of our ALSPs with the traditional law firms on
Yeah.
deals, and
Yeah.
a point of contact within HSBC legal team. Like, I think that may be where we try and move things towards. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, we're not taking the work away from them. That we're just making sure
Absolutely.
again that they're freed up to do our big deals and
Absolutely right. Yeah.
not kind of doing the volume of stuff like a contract review of like 100 contracts or something. Like it's just not
Yeah.
that's not where their value is going to be added.
Yeah. Sophie, time's flown. It's
It has
almost,
gone very quick.
yeah, just these conversations are always so engaging and rich. Um, Last comments. I mean, what do you think the future looks like partnering corporates and ALSPs?
I think it depends on where your starting point is. I think we're going to see as an industry an
Mhm.
increased like reliance on ALSPs, and that increase in kind of risk acceptance in terms of what should stay in house, what should go to traditional law firms, and what should go to an ALSP. And I think that's kind of a bit of an education piece, and people are at different points on that journey. I think
Yeah.
for HSBC, we're quite we're 10 years in pretty much, so we're quite mature in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think for us personally, the evolution will be pushing the boundaries a bit more, kind of sending the more complex stuff
Mhm.
out.
Mhm.
The stuff that's more valuable, but maybe not as strategic, um, and seeing how that works. And then also kind of more partnering with the traditional law firms on those big mega deals that we have that
Yes.
do still stay in the in-house legal team, but maybe thinking how can we come up with like a commercial model that works so that we can get the traditional law firm doing elements of it, but the alternative legal service provider doing different bits of it, and then you kind of tag team and we work as like a collective on a deal.
Yeah.
So that's kind of for us. That's where I see it going. But for other organisations, they may be at the very start of their journey, and I think for them it's kind of working out what work needs to stay in house and what work actually somebody else can do.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. I mean, great place to land. Sophie, thank you so much for your time. It's been really good speaking with you.
No
Well, I
worries,
hope
it's been
everyone
great.
learned tons. Uh, I mean, the future's bright. Let's keep
Yeah,
partnering together.
excellent. Cool. Thanks, Ian. Speak to you later.
Sophie, speak later.
Cheers. Bye
Bye.
bye.